The candlelight flickered against the walls, casting shadows that danced, as if mirroring our movement. His hands were on my hips, strong and sure, pulling me closer as I straddled him on the sofa. "I've never felt anything like this," Jack whispered, his voice rough and low, his eyes looking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I smiled, a small knowing curve of my lips, and leaned in to kiss him deeply. Every touch was deliberate, every caress igniting something wild inside me. My nails dug into his shoulders as I arched my back, feeling his warmth envelop me completely. The world outside faded. It was just the two of us, our bodies entwined, lost in the electric connection we had discovered. I whispered his name as we moved together, a melody of passion and need that I never wanted to end. Jack's breath quickened against my skin, his lips trailing a line of fire along my collarbone as his hands explored my body. The sofa creaked beneath us as we moved together, a symphony of motion and rhythm. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, refusing to let the moment slip away. Every inch of him felt like an extension of the music I had spent my life perfecting. Dynamic, powerful, and impossible to ignore. I leaned back, my head resting against the edge of the sofa, as Jack's touch sent waves of heat coursing through me. The flickering candlelight made his silhouette seem almost surreal, his face hovering just above mine, his expression a mixture of longing and awe. I traced the curve of his jaw with trembling fingers, my voice barely a whisper. "Don't stop." I breathed as his lips captured mine again with renewed intensity. As we reached the crescendo, I clung to him, feeling the rawness of the moment, the vulnerability that came with allowing someone to see every part of me. When it was over, I collapsed into his arms, our bodies still tangled together. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken words, shared secrets, and the unshakable sense that, for the first time in my life, I was truly alive. Jack brushed a strand of hair from my face and kissed my forehead. This can't leave this room," he said softly, his words a sharp reminder of what we were doing. But I didn't care. For once in my life, I had what I wanted, and I wasn't about to let it slip away. I should have known better. Jack Reilly wasn't the kind of man to stick around. He had a wife, a family, a perfect little life that didn't include me. But from the moment he walked into my office that Friday afternoon, I was captivated. His smile was easy, his laugh infectious, and the way he looked at me made me feel like the only woman in the world. When he invited me out for drinks after the meeting, I said yes without hesitation. One drink turned into 3, and before I knew it, we were in a cab heading back to my apartment. I told myself it would be one night, a fleeting escape from the loneliness that had consumed me for so long. But as the days passed, I found myself replaying every moment with him, every touch, every kiss. I called him once, then twice, leaving careful, casual messages on his office line. When he didn't respond, I showed up at his office, pretending it was work-related. His eyes widened when he saw me, a mix of guilt and something else. Something that told me he hadn't forgotten me either. We made love again, and this was stranger than the first time. Jack came to me in the middle of the night, his face shadowed with indecision, but his body betraying him as he reached for me. We didn't speak as I led him to my bedroom, the moonlight streaming through the curtains, illuminating the hesitation in his eyes. But the moment his hands touched my skin, all his doubts seemed to vanish. He kissed me with a fervor that bordered on desperation, his fingers tracing patterns down my spine as I pulled him closer. This time I let myself believe he meant more, that it wasn't just a fleeting distraction in his carefully curated life. Jack's hands moved over me with a sense of urgency, as though he was trying to memorize every curve, every inch before it slipped away. His lips pressed against my collarbone, lingering there for a heartbeat too long, sending a shiver down my spine. I arced into him, feeling the heat of his body against mine, the way his touch ignited a fire deep within me. His breath was warm on my neck, his movements confident yet tinged with something fragile, something uncertain that mirrored the storm brewing inside me. I pulled him closer, my fingers tangled in his hair, my heart pounding in rhythm with his. The room was silent except for the sound of our breathing, heavy and intertwined, as though the world beyond these walls had ceased to exist. His hands slid down my sides, their path slow and deliberate, his touch leaving traces of warmth and want. When our eyes met, his gaze was raw and unguarded, a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability that made my chest tighten. In that moment, I felt as though I could fall into him completely, lose myself in the chaos we created together. As we moved together, the boundaries between us blurred, and every touch, every kiss felt like a promise neither of us could fully articulate. The moonlight illuminated his face, his expression unreadable but intense, and I wondered if he was trying to tell me something without words. When it was over, we lay side by side, our breathing still and even, our bodies tangled in the sheets. I turned to him, searching his face for answers, but he was already staring at the ceiling, his mind somewhere I couldn't reach. And yet, for a fleeting moment, I let myself believe that this night meant something more, that he saw me not just as I was, but as I wanted to be. I watched him, memorizing every detail, every line of his face. "Stay," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He hesitated, then nodded, pulling me into his arms. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly wanted. But Jack didn't stay. Not really. He slipped back into his life, into the arms of his perfect wife, leaving me behind with nothing but memories. I called him again, then again, my desperation growing with every unanswered ring. How could he walk away so easily, as though I hadn't meant anything at all? I started to see him everywhere, in the grocery store, on the subway, in my dreams. His rejection burned in my chest, a smoldering fire that refused to die. I wanted to remind him that I wasn't someone he could forget, someone he could leave behind without a second thought. And so I began to act. At first, it was subtle. A voicemail, a letter slipped under his door. But when that wasn't enough, I escalated. He needed to see me, to understand that what we had couldn't just end because he decided it should. Jack had changed my life, and now I was going to change his.